you're just saying those
I know.
things.
But you got speed, Michael, so you're good to go.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Um, Ramona, you have such a great connection because you have worked with Robert Farris Thompson, who was such a pioneer in the understanding of face jugs and connecting the Congolese aspects of face jugs and their use within Edgefield County. Could you tell us more about that? Maybe you can even refer that you've worked with him, and then maybe reiterate some of his original connections with the kaolin inserts and you know, the aesthetics there, but then also elaborate on your own ideas.
The wonderful thing that Bob Thompson did with his original article is that he clearly took European examples and talked about them technically, from how it was made, from the glaze, and then he contrasted that with the face jugs and really showed that they came from a different tradition. He was operating in optimum art historian mode. And this was what was so great about the way that he opened up and approached the subject matter. And of course, he has done extensive, and at that time had done extensive field work among the Congo peoples. So he came ready and armed with a repertoire of motifs and what objects functioned as in Congo culture. And he also understood, and this is really important what he did, he understood that in such conditions as people found themselves, that they were going to hold on to their most important rituals and beliefs. And these had to do in many ways with death and the relationship between the living and the dead, because that you don't have a fully formed personality. You are not fully who you are unless you know and acknowledge that relationship between the living and the dead. The clan is the living and the dead. That is what describes them. So this relationship in the Americas, throughout the Americas, it doesn't just happen with the face jug tradition, but it's in other places. It's really about the, as he called it, the Black Atlantic tradition that united Africa with the Americas. And we see those adaptations throughout and here in North America, because at one point it was believed that did not happen here in North America. But the face jug traditions, conjuration, hoodoo, voodoo, whatever you want to call it, has existed here along with other forms. So Thompson really broke it open when he when he talked about what was being manifest here in this country was not lost coming across the waters, that people held to themselves their most important rituals and beliefs. And one was the notion, what came to be called the cosmogram, the cosmology of this relationship, a sphere in which a person's life rotated counterclockwise from birth to maturation to death into the land of the dead, the mountain below and the mountain and the mountain above, the mountain of the living and the mountain of the dead, reverse noon in the land of the dead. And also there's this color symbolism, which also translates, which is very important. And to my mind, one of the most important scholars to deal with this was Anita Jacobson Whitting, who did this extensive research in the Congo. And Thompson himself talks about it, and she's just a treasure trove of information for how they are connected with various spheres of life. The red, which is that point of mediation between the living and the dead, at the Kalunga line, that watery boundary that has been discussed. The land of the living, the color is black, the social realm of the judicial world, and white, the land of the dead. And you can also think of it in terms of the earth, the ecology. Red, the soil. White, kaolin. Black, the soil that has been worked upon by the hands of human beings, where they've taken through fire and through the intervention of man. They enrich the soil with nutrients. They work in concert with the termite hills that bring nurture to the land. And also through this, they bring their technologies. So with this, how can the transatlantic journey completely destroy any notion of what people came from? You know, it's been discussed here about coming across the waters and the Kalunga line, the land of the dead, and coming across that one is going from the land of the living to the dead. The mind seizes upon that which can explain a trauma that is deep and great. It doesn't become, people did not become catatonic and unable to function. They had to create meaning, and they brought with them their vision of the world to understand that. One artist, a woman by the name of Amina Brendolyn Robinson, has created work that was inspired by her great aunt, who she said had the African name of Themba. And in looking at this, Themba turns out to be assuredly one of those young children who was brought across the water in 1858 at the age of 5. Themba lived to be 105, and Amina knew her from the ages of 3 to 17, and Themba told her her story and showed her the brand on her chest that was also found on others who came on the Wanderer ship. But what is really magnificent is Amina, as an artist, translated that story into art. So we have in art the realization of it in form that undergirds the story of the other wanderer survivors who told their stories to their families, and some of them told their African names. And there is one part of a huge raganon that Amina made, really thinking about what she had been told by Themba. Actually, there are 2 works, and contrasting them is really amazing. One is a panel of a child being grabbed, and she has a pendant on her chest, a hanging pendant where Themba would have been branded. And to the side of her is a turtle, a tortoise, very simple applique, looking as though he's swimming down into the waters. And below, on the bottom register of the of what she calls raganon, which are textiles that are buttons and threads and applique work, they're multimedia, is a field of buttons of various kinds. And buttons in Amina's work relates to souls and lives. So this notion of the water as the Kalunga line and the tortoise, this ritual animal that figured in Congo rites, that the tortoise is swimming down to the land of the dead, and to the side of that is a ship where Themba will be pulled into the ship and experience the ship and what is on the ship. And in the next panel, that it is though that experience is again relived, and you have the inside of the ship. So the trauma of the voyage is being interpreted in a way that it can be understood. And I am struck by how there is this continual echoing with the experiences that are being learned about this ship and what people experienced on this ship and where they came. And we must not forget that There is in Congo, in Central Africa, the red soil, and in America, the red soil of Georgia and South Carolina. And there are on the coast what I was told was called les monts qui dansent, the hills that dance. And you see them lined with trees. You see that in Appalachia where blacks came as well. And there's a culture, the culture of blacks who came to that part of the country. But all of it is related to what is also happening in the coastal cultures and what is happening in Edgefield. So people do not exactly lose the physicality of their environment by coming to this environment, because there's the red clay soil, there is the kaolin, the clay by the riverbanks, the red kaolin, the white kaolin in the veins and in the red soil and the red mountains. So the symbolic system, the color system, can live in this environment, in this soil, as it lived in Congo.
God.
Dr. Austin, rotate center your top necklace.
Okay.
There you go. Sorry, I'm just picky.
No, that's all right.
That was so beautiful.
Maybe you talk about, since we're on it right now, just talk about kaolin.
And talk about kaolin, if you don't mind, and pottery, that this was not, taking people from the Congo and bringing them here to this unfamiliar
Okay, yeah.
practice of making
Yeah,
pottery.
pause for a
This
second.
is what they did in the Congo.
Here, let's pause for 1
What?
second while we're. April, you're good?
Kaolin is a mineral with deep significance in Congo culture. It is used in rituals as a form of anointing. It connects with the world of the dead, the living with the world of the dead in rituals. I myself and my driver were anointed by the Kiamvus, the Grand Chief of the Yaka, right before we had a terrible automobile accident. But we were happy to be anointed with kaolin. But kaolin is also medicinal, as well as a mineral that was used for the connection between the living and the dead. And kaolin is also, it's interesting because it's found in termite mounds, because it's extruded from the body of termites and creates this very compact and hard substance. And these huge termite hills, which become very large, can be hollowed out and used as furnaces. So you have in Congo quite a technology of clay making. You have, among certain groups, funeral stelae that are clay vessels that were used on graves that relate to the relationships of the living and the dead. You have, that you find in America, the lozenge shape, as well in Congo, which in various permutations have to do with the relationship between the living and the dead. It can relate to the grave. It can relate to individuals. It is capturing in that form the cosmos. Kaolin, as the white of the dead, is the color of the other world. So when it's used so purposefully in objects such as the face jug, the eyes, and the mouth, this is seeing into the other world, and the open mouth, as you see on Congo sculpture, is speaking into the other world. You have the mother with child, her mouth is open. She is the great mother ancestress. She is speaking to the other world, to the dead. You have in an Nkisi, you have the mouth open, the eyes. In Congo's culture, for kaolin, you have porcelain for the eyes, but also you will have white on the sculpture signifying that as well as in kaolin and Congo masks for Nganga, which again is that relationship, and various color combinations are connected to various practices. I mean, it deals with particular realms or particular things that Nganga may be addressing in relationship to the society. So kaolin, and kaolin, as I said, is also medicinal. You have women, black women, chewing on chalk when they're pregnant, which can relate directly to the use of kaolin, because kaolin is used in manufacture of kaopectate to calm the digestive system. So we see even in that a correspondence to practices that people brought with them. So they used what they knew from the world they were in to cope. You know, one thing I want to say is that at a meta level, the level of the group, the Black experience in America has been about affliction. And one of the most prominent features of the spiritual and ritual life of African Americans on this continent has been about healing affliction. And Nkisi can heal, protect, and destroy. They were a means by which a very capricious experience where one's control was to be wrested from you on a daily basis, which is a place hard for any human being to exist, could be brought secretively under one's control. And so the world could be a place that, at least on some level, could be negotiated with a kind of certitude that was necessary for people to mentally survive what they were being subjected to. And of course, socially, we know that slavery was a dance between master and slave. And somebody like Dave the Potter, with his talents and abilities, and he could write, and he did this openly, and his writings, what were on his pots, and the way that they may be able to be read, opens up a world of experience that has been not known to us at a public level, and really needs to be known by us to give a fuller picture of who people are and who people were, what they did, and what we've become.
Tell me, like when we were talking in there about the conversation we were having, with just the sudden realization of, you know, we're absorbing this new information that Dave made face jugs and understanding their ritualistic connections. And because of his great skill and his great respect and these vessels going through fire and kaolin, could he have been seen or revered as a type of Nganga?
The question is, could Dave have been revered as a kind of Nganga, and which is a ritual expert who manipulated graveyard dirt, relics, hair, nails, and other various things. In Congo, you might have had a miniature bellows or pincers, because these all related to certain beliefs among the Congo. And smiths were very important. Blacksmiths figured very prominently in the founding myths of the Congo Kingdom, and also as ritual experts themselves. And they worked with fire, earth, fire, and water. And Dave would have been a manipulator of fire and earth to bring forth these vessels. And since we are learning that he has a connection with the face jugs, that he himself produced them, and how they were used, which appear to be in a protective context, and that there might even have been material inside of them so that they themselves were objects of power, of healing, or at least of protection. And that would have made Dave, along with his prominence in the community, a man of special talents who the slave community would have seen as someone that had power, someone to look up to, someone to be followed. Because while the dominant society may have portrayed him I mean, they certainly admired his talent, but to portray him as a powerful human being, that's one thing. But the slave community to see him as such meant actually that there were two societies operating at the same time. One with its interpretation and one which was given legitimacy by slave society. So Dave really encapsulates, in my mind, that reality, that paradigm. And men like Dave helps us to understand how people survived. And the whole notion, he really is part of that tradition of prophets, people of extraordinary insight, skill, who point to another way. Because in terms of prophecy, it's the being led out of the desert, being freed from Pharaoh's thrall, and going to the promised land. So the extraordinary person becomes extremely important within Black culture. There's one staff from Cherry Valley, Arkansas, in the Yale art galleries of a man with a top hat and a book, probably a Bible, because words are important. Sound opens the door between worlds in Congo. And that's why the preacher is very important. To have that mission is extremely important. And on the staff, which is Black in color, which is interesting because, we talked about Black, the social realm, diamonds are embedded, or diamond-like, it's really rhinestones, are embedded into the nodes where the branches were. So it's alive. It's the sap running. It's the power of that object. And when the person held it, he would hold around this long stovepipe hat that the man has, and it would be planted in the ground, so that this is an object of power. And the image on it is the image of a man of power who has the ability to make those connections. And it really is pointing to that other society that has legitimacy for the slave community, for the Black community post-slavery, that allows people to function in a world that is otherwise completely capricious.
Beautifully said. It's really interesting because there's a newly acquired face jug by Chipstone that is completely painted entirely jet black.
Oh my. Oh
What are your
my.
thoughts on that?
My thoughts on that is that it makes a great deal of sense. The lozenge motif you also see on Yombe, and Yombe, the Mayombe, are one of the groups that we find in the Americas, in North America. The Mboma, Woyo. You see on the ethnic groups that are noted that there are these groups. Black deals with the social realm, and these mats that have been studied among the Yombe have various permutations of this form, and they relate to aphorisms and proverbs that all have to do with the social realm and how human beings interact with each other. So I'm not surprised that the jug, if we are thinking that they occupy the place that we're talking about, that color would not be pertinent to the jug as well. Now, there are other colors associated. I mean, we know of the green glazes, and I understand there are also white coloration, but that could very well fit into an Nkisi tradition for the jugs, because Nkisi dealt with various realms of experience. So it could be completely within reason that that color would pertain to that jug and maybe its function.
Beautifully said. I just lost my train of thought there because I get so wrapped up in what
Could
you're
I,
saying.
could I one in here while we're sort of on this subject?
Sure.
In the Dave pot that Buddy found on the SRS site, and we were talking about that last night in the car, the inscription is LM, which stands for Lewis Miles, April 16th, 1862. Now we know that that was the day that Lincoln signed the papers for slaves in Washington, D.C. to be freed. And my question is, as you're talking about Dave as a prophet, when we look at what that says now, Lewis Miles, April. Lewis Miles, April. Lewis Miles is, of course, Leonard's ancestor who enslaved Dave. Lewis is the name of April's that she ended up naming her face jug, not knowing that it was connected to Lewis in another way. And of course, April, Lewis, Miles, April, all in the same thing, in the same almost sentence. And then, of course, the freedom of those slaves, in the political center. What are your thoughts about that now that the connection has been made between Dave and Face Jug because of April?
That's insane. Could you kind of reiterate how she made those connections?
Lewis,
Just like what
Lewis,
she said, like
Lewis
the-
Miles.
Just like the Lewis Miles, who is the owner of Dave being a prophet, April, just all that.
And then finding
I
the
th-
Face
I
Jug
think-
connection yesterday. Sorry.
I think it is a happy circumstance that the face jug that Dave inscribed with Lewis Miles, the slave owner, his
Sorry, I don't mean to stop, but he didn't put it on a face jug. He put
but
it on a
jar.
jar.
Oh,
On a jar,
okay.
sorry, that's-
Okay,
okay.
on a jar.
Yeah.
What was the jar like?
Big jar, right?
Big
Yeah,
jar?
it's a big.
5 gallon.
That's right. I heard you talking about that. Yeah.
Sorry.
but
Yeah. I think it's a happy circumstance that a jar that Dave made, that he inscribed, he could write LM April 16th, 1862, which is an important date in the freeing of slaves, has not only the initials of the slave owner, Lewis Miles, but also April's name. I think it's a happy coincidence, but one which gives you much thought because of the way we are all now focused on what this ship of slaves brought to this continent and how important and influential their individual lives have been, because they came in 1858. A number of them lived into the next century. Themba lived until 1957 and was able to convey her story. We are all brought together by that. And if Dave is a prophet, we can at least say that he was a man of courage. He had a certain fearlessness, a man of great talent and abilities, whose name lives now, even though he was a slave. Whether people know the man he was, and admired the man he was, or knew his personal history, or what importance he had for the people among whom he worked and lived that were his people, they admire the force of his talent. And it is that energy which I think is indicative of human culture, human relationships. It is that energy which is binding us together in understanding what the Wanderer has to tell us, which we absolutely need to understand who we are.
Beautifully said. Goodness.
I was trying to get the dates and everything
You
correct.
did great.
I hope
you
I
did
did.
great.
Great. Just so
That was I sort of threw that one at you, but it popped up since yesterday.
I was just gonna say, where the heck did that come from? That's kind of crazy.
It's real crazy.
That's so crazy. So we covered the Congo and the
You want to think it over for 30 seconds while I get
Sure.
some sound of this
Sure.
lovely room? All right, let's do that. This is Dr. Austin's room tone and Mark. Thank you very much. All right.
I'm thinking, I was talking with Jason about how some of the face jugs have names written on them. We believe they're names of African Americans who lived within the pottery communities of Edgefield. They have the kaolin on them, they're on a face jug. And we also learned from other people that they were buried in the graves, were put on the graves. Is there any significance in writing someone's name in the Congo, or if not, just explain the connections of using them in a grave setting?
I would just toss out that putting the name of the person on the jug would link them certainly to the vessel, but that also Nkisi have names and different names. And I would really research that just look at that, to think about it, and it may hold some very interesting information and revelations in the study of the face jugs as we move on. But certainly putting the person's name on the face jug in this setting, because of how words are important, and you're linking them, who are now going into the land of the dead to begin their journey to become ancestors. You are linking that world with the world of the living, with that person who is now in the grave. So in that sense, I think there is importance to the name being on there. And I think there's more to discover about that. You feel that these names are the names of the people in the graves who have passed on. I think most certainly that could very well be the case, but there could be this other meaning which might exist, which bears looking at and further deepens the fact that people are maintaining the family, living and dead. They are keeping that relationship because it is the dead and their power that is going to assist the living in negotiating the world that they're living in. So it's important to maintain that relationship. In Congo, it would have been by the placement of various objects together in relationships that recall in various ways names of things that could be that could have to do with sound of it or highly elusive relationships. By that I mean this signifies that, which signifies that, which signifies that, and you bring it together for a system of meaning. So it's complex. It's not simple. But once again, it's the maintenance of a relationship. This is the power you have. The clan relationship, the living and the dead, they are the ones who can, propitiating them and manipulating that relationship, that communication between worlds, is what you have in your armor, your spiritual armor, to help negotiate this side of the boundary.
I think we share a great connection that a survivor of the Wanderer has influenced our lives and has, in my case, changed my life. And that we were given the great task of carrying the gift of telling their story. Can you share with us how the ancestor Themba has come to you and how important it is to tell her story and what it means to you?
I will tell you how I came to work on this project because I consider it one of the great blessings of my life to have been asked by the artist to do this, because I have Thimbas in my family. I've been made the repositor of family history. What happened was I did an essay in a book that was a retrospective of the work of Amina Brenda Len Robinson. This was back in 2001, and as I was looking at a Raganon called, it was The Voyage of Abu Bakari, a Malian king who was said to have sent men to America in a boat. And Amina's life, and we have to remember that there were, in the cultures of the South, the rural South, it was not a far leap between societies to really be influenced by these things. And I read a newspaper article from the 1830s about a Tennessee man and his slave. He learned conjuring from his slave, and they went around the mountains conjuring for people. So they had a nice little concern going on of conjuring. But in popular culture, Thimba she's Beulah, she's Mammy, she's Mabel, she takes care of, in the wash, she takes care of people's kids, and very important in that for the South, because part of the ethos of the South comes from white and black children nursing at the breast and being inculcated about life by these women. But in her own culture, she's this towering figure that has essentially, by her nurturance, kept it together. So Dave is here on one hand, Thimba on the other. There are other Daves with similar stories of talent and vision and courage, and there are other Thimbas who are bringing life into the world, who are bringing medicines. We'll call it folk medicines, but they're healing people both spiritually and bodily, and both are manipulating the worlds of the living and the dead.
So beautiful. Christy?
The only other thing that I'd like, and
Do you
it
wanna
may
sit
be
here?
long, it may be long, well, no, not necessarily, it may be long, and how are you doing, Ramona?
I'm fine.
Are you
I
okay?
moved my foot. It was dying a little bit, and one cheek is
I
a
know,
little
my-
dead, but
my
I'm
hip is like,
okay.
"Oh."
Okay,
You're good. Oh,
I think the face jugs are powerful and animating still because of their aesthetics. Because there is a power to aesthetics in human experience. And you know that something elemental is happening in that sphere that is occupied by the jug. And there is an emotional, psychological reality to the way that that object is fashioned. And for me, in what we know about face jugs at this point, on that spectrum of what an nkisi, which is an object that is manipulated by a ritual expert, an nganga, to heal, protect, or destroy, an nganga can do all those things. And nganga's client would come to him or her to have those, to do those acts that will heal, protect, or destroy. The face jug, as we have learned, was set beside the door. It may have contained material, and we know from one that it appears bone was in it. We know that the face itself was represented by the human beings that were brought over by the wonder in certain details. The teeth, the way the teeth were filed. We know that they related to certain practices in the manufacture of wooden work and in masks, and also in the adornment of the bodies of Nganga that opened the portals, the use of kaolin, opened the portals between worlds. We know that that they most likely appear to have been objects that protected. And there are other cultures African cultures, who have objects that do the same thing. A door is an important place. It's where people enter. It's where bad, malevolent forces may enter. So having something placed there which has been animated by spirit force, by a ritual expert, the conjure doctor / Nganga in another setting, makes all the sense. And because of the stylistic variations, one can take a look at various styles of sculpture. When I look at various face vessels, I see different groups: Manyanga, Woyo, Yombe, Mboma, groups that are discussed in the literature among Americans, African Americans, slaves, former slaves. So that's the place that I think the face vessel occupies. Others may be occupied by the nkisi that is cloth in which medicines, herbs are wrapped. An nkisi in Congo terms is anything that is imbued with the spirit force of the ancestors, that can be the chief. He is consecrated as an Nkisi is consecrated. The similar formulas, prescriptions, that things of that nature. So the world becomes, in a way which I think we have lost in our contemporary culture, a place that is animate with force, mana in some cultures, that it is alive, that if we are in tune with it, that we can be ourselves imbued and embrace that spirit force and use it to make life understandable, life lived at a high level of competency, and, as they would say in the church, righteousness. It has its place in the corpus of Nkisi that is not only here in the New World, but also in the Old.
They're very nice. I mean, I could ask you tons more questions, but I think we've got,
That was fantastic.
yeah.
Did that mean that had help? I was trying.